CarolinaBarbecueSauce.com is where you can go to order it and have it delivered right to your doorstep. That would include the sauce and the rub. CarolinaBarbecueSauce.com if you need catering or a food truck or anything in between. Billy G's Carolina Barbecue. It is some of the best you'll find. All the fixings, of course, the barbecue is can't miss. And yes, they do use their own sauce as well. Billy G's CarolinaBarbecue.com. JC, JB, and Phil, 2 more hours to go here on Inside the Gamecocks, the show. We're joined and very honored to have Daniel Kelly with us here, who took kind of a, I don't want to say last minute invitation, but accepted the invitation quickly to come on our program. He has been involved in NFL scouting for quite some time. We're going to let him tell his story here in just a moment. And he runs the website firstroundmock.com, and he is very, very, very high on a guy that we all know very well around here, Spencer Rattler, now former quarterback of your South Carolina Gamecocks. But first and foremost, Daniel Kelly, thank you so much. We're glad to have you. It's nice to see you. I'm sure you've been getting this has been getting picked up by multiple media outlets in the state of South Carolina. So we're really glad to have you here and really anxious to learn more about you and your background and what leads you to all these thoughts and predictions and all that type of stuff. Thanks, man.
Hey, absolutely. Thank you so much, guys, for having me on the show. I'm honored to be on with you guys today.
So do me a favor, because you know how it goes, right? You know, when people put out predictions and things like that, especially like you're standing out on a limb here. There's not a lot of folks who've come out and said the things you've said about Spencer Rattler, who we're going to specifically talk about today. But when people do that, you get the Twitter world and the social media world and all these people, and they're wondering, well, who the hell is this guy and what does he know? So who is Daniel Kelly and what do you know? How about that? Tell us who you are. Give us your background so people understand where this is all coming from.
Absolutely. Hey, be glad to. So my story is I grew up in Minnesota, just a fanatical fan of the Washington Redskins back in the day, and exchanging letters with Joe Gibbs as a teenager, that type of thing. Went to the Super Bowl when I was in Minneapolis. I had this burning passion for football. Wasn't big enough to play. Was about 5'10", 130 pounds, soaking wet, playing high school ball. So that didn't work out too well. But I had this tremendous passion for the game, and my parents had given me a book for my 17th birthday, Secrets of NFL Scout by Tony Brisano, the former director of player personnel for the 49ers back in the Bill Walsh days. And it was love at first sight. I mean, I just grabbed a hold of it. I said, this is what I want to be. I want to be an NFL scout. So I started like recording games, self-teaching myself how to scout. There wasn't any scouting online universities or anything like that back in the day. Just kind of like learn as I go. And that kind of led into when I was about 21 years old, I had a chance to go to the Minnesota Vikings headquarters for like a mock draft radio thing for KFAN radio up there. I was one of the first 32 callers. I went up there, they had me represent the Jacksonville Jaguars. I said, got up to the microphone, scared to death, said, Tony Boselli, offensive tackle, USC. and the corner of my eye, I noticed Tony Dungy sitting over there. He was a defensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings at the time. Yeah. And of course, I approached him. I took all my old draft reports. I've been trying to get in scouting since I was 18 with Charlie Castle, the former Redskins GM. So I took all my reports over to him. Of course, that's before he became like world famous, Tony Dungy. And so nobody was bothering him. Nobody was at his table. And he was more than happy to talk with me. And he said, hey, how would you feel about coming to my office next week? And we can, sit down and go through the reports. And I can compare them to what I had in Kansas City with Blesto. I'm like, absolutely, I'm there. Long story short, that turned into a 6-month unpaid internship with Coach Dungy. And from there, I went back into the real world, selling Kirby vacuum cleaners, surfing, couch surfing, you name it, until I was at 24 years old at Bank of America Mortgage as a loan officer. And I'm like, what am I doing here? My dream is to be an NFL scout. So I got a little satellite dish, started recording games. Long story short on that, it turned into be a 350-page self-published NFL draft guide in 1998. I put, personalized it for every head coach, director of player personnel, GM in the NFL, sent an overnight mail. And that's how I ended up with the New York Jets, hired as a pro personnel assistant under then head coach Bill Parcells. And my interview at the Jets came down to me staring across, like sitting next to me with Bill Belichick, who's the defensive coordinator at the time, and convincing him to hire me at 24 years old. So that was That was the cool part of that story. And it turned out to be an amazing 4 years. Worked on a Hall of Fame staff, a who's who staff. We had just a lot of names that listeners might know. We had Dick Haley as our director of player personnel. We had Scott Pioli, Mike Tannenbaum, Eric Mangini was there, Romeo Cornell, Al Groh, Dan Henning, Charlie Weiss. The list goes on and on. We just Todd Haley was there. And a lot of the young guys have gone on since to become like GMs. JoJo Wooden was recently the interim GM with the Chargers. I worked with him for 4 years. Chris Shea with the Kansas City Chiefs. He's in their upper management now, and alike. And then I got out of the scouting, with the Jets after 4 seasons, not by choice. But just because of circumstances, a lot of changes in staff and so forth, and some personal things went on my life as well. And, then I started, kind of got away from football for a few years and started I had a chance maybe to be assistant pro scouting director with the Cardinals in 2006. That fell through. 2012, I went to the NFL scouting combine, spoke for Sports Management Worldwide, kind of talking about what it takes to get into the NFL in front of an auditorium of 300 people. At that event, I came face to face with Andy Reid, then head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. Coach Reid really liked my work. That almost turned into an opportunity, but I fell through at the last second. In 2017, I was in contact with Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Cleveland Browns, who had asked for my ideas how to turn around that franchise. 2019, I interviewed with the Washington then Redskins with Bruce Allen, and all along it came down to, he said, like, I wanted, after the season, maybe a position in coaching, special teams, because I was the first special teams scout in NFL history with the Jets. And so he's like, maybe a position like assistant special teams coach, maybe a position in, scouting. Maybe you can sit down and talk to Doug Williams after the season ends. Of course, he gets fired that Black Monday. So it's back to the drawing board, which has entailed me writing for Sports Illustrated Detroit Lions, New York Jets, San Francisco 49ers, NFL Draft Diamonds, and now, of course, Yardbarker as well. And now I'm running my own draft website, as you mentioned at the top of the show, firstroundmock.com. So I've had a tremendous journey, a very blessed, privileged journey to be able to, mix with a lot of the who's who in the NFL, and, learned a lot from a lot of great minds around me during my time in the league and even before then.
Yeah, wow. I mean, what a man! You've been with some of the best ever do it at the highest level of football. I love the website, by the way. And
thank you.
I want to make sure I pass that along. I was kind of looking at it yesterday and looking at it this morning, and I always enjoy, and JC, who has been scouting or in evaluating talent at the high school and collegiate level for over 20 years. I try to learn from guys like him and you and all these other dudes, and pick up on little things that, the common person never. I'm more of a baseball guy when it comes to the analytics. When it comes to the football stuff, try to learn something new every day. One of my dear friends, Pat DeMarco, I'm sure you've seen him play in the NFL. These guys, we try to listen to them and figure it all out. And so I was looking at your website, and I was learning, and I just found some really interesting stuff on there. So I really appreciate all of your hard work. And we want to make sure that we kind of turn the attention to one of the reasons we brought you on here. I'm going to quote you in your discussion of Spencer Rattler, the quarterback at South Carolina, or formerly now. And here's what you said. This was the first thing that you wrote about Spencer Rattler. Quote, "It was love at first sight when I watched Rattler at Oklahoma in 2020. I love what I see in his eyes. Everything I want in a QB is in his eyes." What does that mean?
It's hard to explain. It just happened. Like people asked me when I was a kid, growing up in Minnesota, why the Washington Redskins? I mean, why not the Vikings? And my explanation always is it was like a magnet to a refrigerator. It was just love at first sight. And that's the way I described, as you mentioned, viewing Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma. There was just everything about him resonated with my soul. He was just everything I would want in a quarterback. I love the gunslingers. I love the Brett Favre types, the guys that, they're gonna fight you tooth and nail, and they're gonna give you everything they got and see what you have for an answer. And that's what Spencer struck me as is a gunslinger who just was very passionate, fiery, a guy with ice in his eyes, a guy that wanted to win. And that's a big thing, because in the NFL, they talk about in scouting circles that, the game is won or lost from the neck up. And, all these guys are fast, they're big, they can, run, they can do all these things, they all, have, great diets, agents, etc. But what separates the guys? It's really from the neck up. And so when I watch Spencer Rattler, like Bill Parcells, he had like 6 critical factors of scouting when I was with the Jets. And one of those was, is football important to him? That was one of the questions. And right off the bat, I could see the answer is a resounding yes with Spencer Rattler, is that this guy wanted to win in the worst way. And that really stuck out to me as something that really resonated with me, because believe it or not, when I watch a lot of these guys, and no disrespect towards anybody at any level, but it's, a lot of times watching these prospects on game film, it's, it's different, being a fan, right? I'm just like everybody else, like you guys, everybody else. That's who I am. I'm a fan too at heart, right? So when I watch a game from a fan perspective, and you guys, evaluate, like you said, know this, that's a lot different when you watch somebody from an evaluation standpoint. As a fan, I'm watching the game, I'm drinking a beer, I'm eating a chicken wings. Hey, look at that. As an evaluator, I'm watching that specific player in every single detail, maybe 2, 3, 4 times, 5 times on a given play, writing just crazy amounts of notes. I have notebooks after notebooks stacked in my drawers. And, so it's like when you hone in on a player, it's like, okay, a lot of these guys are just, it's like watching paint dry, on film. They're just, they dog it. Sometimes they play, sometimes they don't. Parcells called them Jags, just another guy, and a lot of these, don't stick out. But when they do stick out, when they do pop on game film, I take very special notice of that. And that's what happened when I saw Spencer Rattler initially, and like, who is this guy? And I've got to get to know him better in game film.
JC, I know you're right. I can see you unmute yourself. You're ready to pop in there. Go for it, my man.
Sure. And this has been a theory of mine, and educated theory, actually. And look, watching Spencer at Oklahoma and that offense was a lot of fun, right? But we all know that's not a pro-style offense. We all know, and in the Big 12, and especially pandemic year in 2020, nobody played defense that year in college football. I'm not saying it's fool's gold. After that, it comes to South Carolina, bad OC last year. They finally figured it out at the end, and you saw what happened. This year, not a bad OC at all. In fact, a guy that I think got him ready, but not a lot of personnel around him, especially up front. They had 12 different offensive linemen injured by the end of the year. Those guys were all playing at 60%. I mean, it was a historically tough year injury-wise up front at South Carolina, and then no Juice Wells. So you had basically one receiver. To me, my theory is that actually makes him better prepared to step into the NFL. That, along with learning a quote-unquote pro-style system where he has to check, has to make his reads, has to get out there and quarterback, more so than maybe, take a step and sling it to Mr. 5-star receiver against a Big 12 defense. I think, stats aside, playing in the SEC these last 2 years probably has made him a better pro prospect. And maybe if he just had one more year at Oklahoma, won the Heisman and gone on, maybe he's more ready to step in. Maybe I'm a Bears fan. They get rid of Justin Fields. Spencer Rattler could step in, I think, and play earlier based on what he's been through the last 2 years at South Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. You make a lot of great points there. I think that he is, pro ready. And that's the thing I look at too, is that, there's a huge difference, between, great college quarterbacks to me and NFL great quarterbacks, and a lot of times what I say is that, I'm watching these prospects through, the NFL colored, glasses, if you will. And so I'm looking for things like, you're talking about, like, I definitely agree. I mean, the offensive coordinator, Dow Logans, this year definitely did a great job of getting him pro ready. I mean, the television announcers talked about it, quite often during the games. And also about how he had matured, with those offensive line challenges you touched on, how he had, kind of got in there a little bit more. And they talked about the leadership and the maturity that he had and, kind of learning those different things that you alluded to. And so, when I'm watching these guys, I'm watching for things that translate to success in the National Football League that I've seen over the last 40 plus years. Things like, progressions. Are these guys going through the progressions in the pocket? Are they just one read quarterbacks, just lock in and go? Quarterbacks in the NFL, you see them, they're looking around, they got to be able to go through multiple, progressions with the complexity of the National Football League and the defenses and everything that they have. Another thing I'm looking at too is time to throw. That's a big one, and the thing I like about Spencer too, when he's back in the pocket, he's setting up shop, is that he's got extremely quick reflexes. I mean, you see him back there. He's just really, you guys, I'm sure you've seen it. Like he's really just really fast and moving around back there. And his time to throw is at, according to PFF, is 2.82 seconds, which compares, of course, it's a different level. It's an apples to oranges comparison, but it does compare to the Commanders quarterback, Sam Howell, who's also at 2.82 seconds, to kind of give an idea how that might translate. But I'm looking at that. That's important. I mean, that's the thing that's really hurt Justin Fields in Chicago. I think his time to throw is like 3.23 seconds, and according to Next Gen Stats. One Mississippi, two Mississippi, you better get the ball in your hands, or you're going to be in trouble, and you're going to be running around in the National Football League. So that's something I look at, the time to throw. I also look at ball placement, different than completion percentage. I'm looking for a quarterback that can put the ball where it needs to be with the receivers, and so they can catch it and go, run right through it, opposed to jumping and diving and doing all this crazy stuff like we saw like a Zach Wilson, for example, do at BYU. And then also too, ball security. That's a big one too. And what I mean by that for our listeners is that, is taking care of the football, not just the interceptions, but I personally chart PBU's pass breakups during the games when I watch them. And I'm really looking at how many times are the defenders getting a helmet, a hand, something on, batting the ball down the line of scrimmage is something I look at. And that's an area where Spencer really improved this last season, was making better decisions. The Spencer Rattler back at Oklahoma, early on in South Carolina, I saw a lot of, kind of risky kind of throws that, make you wonder, like, should he really throw in that? But this season, and again, that's probably the influence, of the new OC, is that he really seemed to be making a lot better decisions. And that's stuck out to me as well, guys.
We've discussed a lot of things that you can continue to improve on, you work on as a quarterback. There's also another side of every athlete on planet Earth. It's called God-given ability. How much God-given ability does Spencer Rattler have in your mind? A
lot. He's loaded with it. He is. The thing I like about Spencer when it comes to God-given ability are his instincts. That's something that coaches can't teach. It's either like Parcells said, they're like, they don't bite when they're puppies, they're generally not going to bite. And Spencer has that feeling in the pocket, like he feels things around him. He's got very good instincts.
So one of the things I've heard, I'm asking, that's why I'm asking you the question, because I have no idea. I think that the NFL has proven that this narrative can be false if you're in the right system, but that people have talked about his height as being a concern. Is that a concern?
No.
Why not?
I don't think it's a concern because of his mobility. He's able to slide up, and he's able to climb the pocket. He's able to slide around back there. He's able to, if you had a dinosaur in the pocket, a guy that just sat there and didn't move, that would be an issue, probably with everybody's hands going up when he released the ball. But he's able to kind of maneuver his way around, and he sees the field exceptionally well. He's got good field awareness back there, and arm talent too, to send a sidearm pass or this or that. So he seems to have very good awareness of his throwing lanes. So to your point, it could really be a concern for some guys that don't have that skill set. But for Spencer, I don't think it's going to be an issue because he does have it.
I've said this repeatedly. I've been around Gamecock football for almost 40 years. JC's been around it. He looks young, but JC's almost 80 years old. No, I'm just kidding. We've been around a while. I've never seen anybody that throws the football like Spencer Rattler does, that has put that uniform on. I doubt you've watched every South Carolina quarterback for the last 30 or 40 years or anything like that. But his passing ability, based on the things that my eyeballs aside, because they actually mean nothing in this conference. Who cares what I think? When you talk to people that actually do understand things, Steve Spurrier has said this. He's elite. He could throw the football as well as anybody. Would you agree with something like that?
Yes.
Yeah. When he one of the things that we have learned over the, are you okay on time right now, or are you in a?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we weren't, keeping you from something.
Thank you. Thank you. No, absolutely. I appreciate it.
If we've learned anything over the years, if I've myself have learned anything, we were talking about this yesterday, as a matter of fact, with Rattler, is that when you, and I'd like you to elaborate on the process here, when you declare for the draft, or when you go to the combine, and all these organizations begin scouting you, they're turning over every rock, turning through every page. They're calling elementary school teachers, and they're doing all kinds of things to figure out exactly who you are, especially at this position. If you're going to be the guy they want to lead their franchise. When Spencer Rattler came into college football and got to Oklahoma, we all know about the TV show that he was involved in. When he transferred to South Carolina, that was one of the things that Shane got asked the most here. We all know Shane pretty well. And it used to frustrate him. He's like, that's not the guy that I'm bringing in, guys. I spent time. I coached this guy. I know Spencer Rattler. What you hear about and saw on TV, that's not the Spencer Rattler that I know. 2 years later, that was proven to be true. He's been, I think, as exceptional of a teammate as you could ask for. I'd like you to dive in a little bit more to the process and the things that Spencer has probably already begun to experience, and what he will experience over the next couple of months as he prepares for the draft, and how those questions will be asked, and how he may need to answer them, and how that could or could not affect his draft status and who takes him.
Absolutely, JB. Great question. It is extremely intense for these guys once the season ends. All the postseason festivities begin, and you're right. They will look under every rock. They'll dig underneath it to see exactly. They'll talk, like you said, to the school teachers. They'll talk to the neighbors. They'll talk to, there's some scouts are savvy enough to go into a school and, they know better than to talk to the coaching staff sometimes, because they feel maybe they're just going to get, certain answers. So they'll talk to the janitor, or they'll talk to a staff member or the front desk attendant and be like, tell me about Spencer. Some of the more experienced scouts will do that. What's he like when he comes in the morning in the building? What's he, how does he, because over time, and that's really what this is scouting is a process, I believe, of being able to gather information. I mean, that was a saying at the Jets building. That was Belichick's, big thing was we're in the information gathering business, gather it, but never give it, was the saying around the building. And so, I mean, every piece of information is valuable in the evaluation process, because it could be anything. And what you're looking for is patterns and tendencies of information over a sustained period of time. So these scouts will come in there, they ask questions, they'll talk to the coaches, they'll talk to people. There's going to be, different, postseason, type of, games and workouts and pro days and the NFL Combine I've been to 6 times. And, every team will want to talk to Spencer, and they'll ask him the most bizarre questions. So if anyone's listening that knows Spencer, get ready for it.
What's the most bizarre question you've ever heard asked? Could you even remember off the top of your head?
What's your favorite part of Forrest Gump and why?
You're kidding me. Somebody asked that question?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a few years ago when Forrest Gump was, like coming out on that. But because what they're doing, and I was taught this by Bill Belichick's most trusted personnel scout, who was my mentor for over 20 years, is what they're doing is they don't really care about the words so much. And I'm talking about the veteran staffs. They're watching the body language, because the teams will say, a man's mouth can say whatever, but the body language cannot lie. So they'll say things, and they'll kind of, like a police interrogation. They'll give a couple warm-up questions, like, hey, what's your favorite food? Pizza. Next is, what's your favorite soft drink? Pepsi. Wow, this is easy. And, oh, by the way, have you ever, did you drink alcohol underage? And the whole room would just go silent. And, okay, and so they'll do different questions like that. And a lot of times, and this is something else too, I would tell, Spencer, if he was listening, or anyone who knew him, in the process is these teams tend to ask questions only that they know the answers to. So they've done the work on this stuff. So, so that, that's an encouragement to always, make sure you go into the full detail of whatever the questions are. And there's really no right or wrong answers. It's not like it's a police interrogation or something, but they want to get to know the player from the neck up, because really and truly, this is not just about like fantasy football or playing Madden. This is about bringing in a young man, especially at the most important position in the game, the quarterback position, leading a locker room of 53 guys. It's about who is Spencer Rattler. We want to know to the best of our ability who he is. Now, we've done all this background work, but now we're going to talk to him. Okay, and we're going to form these questions. Who are you? Who are we bringing into our locker room? Because we see the stuff in the news all the time in the press where, these guys have, different things happen and it becomes front page news. So they want to know who is he? How will he lead the team? How will he be able to motivate, inspire? That's a big one they want to know about is, how are you going to be? Because you're working with, everyone's a millionaire here. How are you going to inspire your teammates? Tell me about a time that you inspired, your teammate. Tell me, about this or that. So that's really the thing they really will get inside of his head. And of course, as we all saw last year with CJ Stroud, with that, that test he took pre-draft, teams will give, different psychological testing too during the process. And of course, then there's the offseason. A lot of players will go and join like a program like Exos that do a great job, those folks, and prepare them for the combine prior to that. Then you go to the combine and you go through all the drills. And another big thing you should be prepared for too is that working with different receivers. That's the reason why the combine exists with the drills and stuff, is because you've worked with this guy for 2 years every day after practice and throwing passes. Okay, now let's see how you are with these 4 guys that you've never met before in your life. So that's a big part of it too, is just be ready for unfamiliarity, be ready for intense questions. Everybody reads eye contact. My best advice I could give a prospect is look every individual in the eyes that asks you a question, because they're all reading the eyes and they want to know, because you're coming into the organization. For Spencer Rattler, he's coming in there to lead a locker room, to represent an NFL team, and to represent a city and a state. This is a big, big deal. The quarterback gets more attention than any other position in the sport of football. So it's going to be an intense process. And of course, he'll have good people in his corner that will be, who have been down this road a few times with other people and themselves. They'll be also giving him similar advice as I'm sharing with you guys.
Spencer Rattler certainly will be representing this state. There's a whole entire state behind him cheering for him to be the first quarterback drafted out of the University of South Carolina since Todd Ellis in the 1980s. It has been a while. I just tweeted out as well the column that you wrote back on January the 4th, titled Spencer Rattler Franchise NFL QB. I would encourage all of those who are watching and listening now and later to go check this out. It is pretty unique. One of the things that you pointed out was his completion percentage at 68.9. It's higher than Caleb Williams, Michael Penix Jr., Cam Ward, Joe Milton, and Drake May, all of them. Really incredible with all the things that JC pointed out earlier, the struggles that the Gamecocks had up front, Juice Wells going down with an injury. Xavier Legette's a guy, before we let you run, I'm going to ask you if you're going to preview the wide receivers, because I would love to know where you think he's going to end up as far as the NFL draft goes as well. But yeah, there's a lot of great stuff that you pointed out in there. And quickly, we didn't really get to all these other quarterbacks. How would you just describe the class this year in general that Spencer Rattler is a part of that is off to the NFL?
This has been one of the most challenging classes I've ever evaluated. It's a very interesting class. It's for example, Joe Milton III, who I'm much higher on than anybody else in the country too, it seems, is somebody that I call the toughest evaluation I've ever done in my professional career. Yes. And, but it was challenging because when you look at a Joe Milton, for example, he's the guy with the huge arm, can throw an orange like out of the stadium, and these videos he puts on stuff, but the part of it is how does he translate again, the progressions, the ball placement, the ball security, the time to throw. I mean, Joe Milton III has the same time to throw as Matthew Stafford. A lot of people don't know that. But looking at that, that's why Milton was challenging. Michael Penix Jr., my QB2 in this behind Rattler, was challenging because Back when Penix was at the University of Indiana, I had an undraftable free agent grade on him because the guy couldn't stay healthy, and then when he could, his ball placement was all over the road. So he went from Indiana being undraftable free agent on my board to moving up on the board once he got to Washington. 2022, I think I had a 6th-round grade on him. This year, he was much better in terms of his accuracy. Going through his progressions was the biggest thing that Michael Penix Jr. improved on this year, because he's now, before he would just lock in with that huge elongated throwing motion like a Mark Brunell or something, he would just lock in the past. But now he's like looking around, and he's even like doing something C.J. Stroud was famous for doing in my mind at Ohio State, was looking off defenders and then going. So it helps cut down on the PBUs, the pass breakups and stuff like that. Guys like the challenge with Drake May. I love Drake May in 2022 game film, and I've watched every single snap of Drake May and Caleb Williams over the last 2 years. But he regressed. He regressed on his 2023 game film in my mind. He seemed like he was a lot more frustrated, a lot more like an inward anger it seemed like he had. And he was pressing the ball a lot more. And so his downfield ball placement was just average. Same thing with Caleb Williams. He regressed a lot this season in my mind. And that's the surprising part, that the national narrative is that, this guy can't seem to do anything. It's like he's Superman. He can't do anything wrong. I mean, he stays at QB1 from the time, from way back when.
He's soft, in my opinion. Caleb, soft. And again, Bears have a decision to make, right? I don't care if he throws it better than Justin Fields right now. I'd trade and let him be generational and get as much draft stock as you trade him to y'all's Commanders. Trade him to Commanders. Hey, he's a DC native. Let him go home and see what happens.
And if I can quickly point out to your point about Caleb Williams, is we talked about Justin Field having the slowest time to throw in the NFL on next gen stats at 3.23 seconds. Well, Caleb Williams, according to PFF, has 3.21 seconds. So it's like the same time to throw on top of it, plus all those different issues you got going on from the neck up. So I completely agree with you on that. But it was a very challenging class for sure. I evaluate, I think total, I looked at 196 games on these 8 quarterbacks I have on my quarterback board. So that's like, if you do the math, that works out to like 12 seasons of for an NFL team. So I mean, I looked at a lot of game tape and ground through it. So, but it was challenging because of all those different, the ways that some of those quarterbacks had changed. Some got better, like Rattler improved, and Penix got better, and Joe Milton III got better, and other guys, kind of slid down, and and so it was definitely a challenge.
Right. One of the interesting tidbits I picked up from your column about all these quarterbacks, Daniel, was on Caleb Williams, I didn't realize that 2-9 against ranked competition since he's been at Southern Cal. That's telling, and that's something I'm understanding that NFL guys pay attention to. How do you play when you play against the best? And we'll see. So what do we expect from you going forward? Like, will you continue? I mean, this is what you do. So like, will we expect similar draft board style rankings of different positions as the draft approaches in a couple of months?
Absolutely. I'm working hard. Believe it or not, it takes me about 10 months of working about 17 hours a day, 6 days a week to set a first round board. And so it's a very involved process for me. And that's 6 days a week. And so, yes, I will continue to release scouting evaluations. I just finished up the quarterbacks, and I just started with the wide receivers class. And then after that, I'll do Brock Bowers again. I'll circle back and do him, the offensive lineman, go over to the edge rushers, corners. I'll eventually work my way around to everyone, and hopefully, knock on wood here on the table, that I'll have an official released first round mock as of March 15th. And so it'll be all out, doing shows, I manage a team of writers at First Round Mock, and just grinding through the tape, because as the old saying goes in scouting, the game film doesn't lie.
Well, you get that right. Well,
it does not.
I can tell you a guy that this state is very, very proud of is Xavier Legette from Mullins, South Carolina. He's a stud, and he's going to go to the NFL, and he's going to play a long time. Talk about a kid who developed. So if you don't mind it, and we're going to put you on the spot, and you have to say the right things on the spot, but I truly mean this. Behind the curtain, you can tell us no. We'd love to have you back down the road to get some more from you. I've been doing this a long time.
I love that.
And I have found this conversation to be as fascinating as any that I've had in a long time. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
you're very welcome.
Most draft guys don't. You're kind of like Phil Steele from that does the college football magazine with all the stats and stuff. It's been a great interview for real. I mean,
thank you.
I've interviewed my share of draft guys before, and yeah, you're doing well for yourself, Daniel.